Okay, today we're going to start on Daf Yotes on the bottom. Daf Yotes Amid Aleph Daitike 19. A. So it's Daitike. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And in this chus of our learning, we should have the basic Mikdash. Learning in the memory of the Nishmas. David Golda, Aspar Benyamin. And whoever needs to refer Shlema, shall refer Shlema. Okay, so the Gemara starts out like this. We quote the Mishnah. It says documents that are found should not be returned. And the reason for that is that maybe they were written, but they weren't given. One of these documents is a daitiki, which is a will, or matana, which is a loan, or shayfrim, which are receipts. So it goes like this. What is this daitiki? We translate daitiki as a will. What does this really mean? It says Ezu daitiki dotehe lemekam. It's probably like a dotehe lemekam v'liyas. It's like a compound word. It says this should be established, which is a will, a document, which means that whatever the person on his deathbed says, that's the final. Yeah. When it's written, it's as if it's handed over. When the person makes a will, it's like a final statement. He's allowed to change his mind, as you'll see. But regarding the kinyan of the one that's acquiring it, that's already done. Yeah, does that make sense? How do they put it over there? What is the strength of someone on his deathbed?
I guess that's the difference between the other documents, that once they're given is when it takes effect.
During the word daitiki is a contraction of dole make okay. Transactions are normally not valid unless the kinyan is performed. However, a sick bed will be an exception to this rule, for the rabbis decreed that the instructions of a seriously ill person take effect on his death, even if no formal kinyan was performed. Okay. Accordingly, the will need not be handed over to the beneficiary for it to take effect. It is valid and enduring even though no formal kinyan has been performed. Okay, so there's 2 points. It doesn't need to be handed over, and it also doesn't need a kinyan.
I remember a long time ago we discussed, like, if the person, like, the likelihood of him recovering was less, is like more like a solid thing. But or that if he gave everything away.
Yeah, that's the difference, right? Right. I'm not going to get into that over here. Shemes, that if he dies, nechasav l'plaini, that the property goes to so and so. That's the will. Matana. The next thing that the Mishnah mentioned was a document of a gift. Morning. It says, what's the matana? Kol shekasav by me'ayem alachamisa. A gift means when he says that I'm giving it to you today, but you will only eat the fruits after he passes away. So which means that the original owner doesn't have the rights to sell it already from now because he's already given the property, but the recipient doesn't get any benefits from it until after he passes away. Alma, we see from this, if he writes that's going to be a good gift. And if he doesn't give it like that, if he doesn't say that I'm giving you the property now, but you only get the fruits later, then loikani, then he won't. The problem is, if he says v'loi, if he doesn't say that, So what does he say? He says, I'm giving to you everything right now. So like honey, he doesn't acquire it. You have to say that like in a question, in a astonishment. He doesn't acquire. Why can he only give why can he only give a gift where he gives half of it now and the rest later? Why does that? Why is that? Amar Abaya Hachikamar. Abaya says no. That's not what the Bryson meant. Bryson meant what is an example of a healthy person giving a gift that would affect, that would be similar to a will, so a gift of a shkamira? That's if he says that I'm giving the gift to you now, and you're going to get the rest of, and you're going to get the produce after he dies.
So he specifically makes that stipulation, or that's the definition that you're saying as a gift?
Yeah, so it doesn't mean that it needs to be the stipulation. The gift would be a gift either way. But if you just want to have a healthy person giving a gift that would take effect similar to a person on a sickbed giving a gift, then you would do it like this, where he says, I'm giving you the property now and you get the produce later. In other words, even a healthy person can give a gift similar to a sick person, but he has to do it like this, where the property is owned and he'll eat the produce later.
You could also give property and someone can benefit from the property immediately.
Yeah, do it like that as well.
Does he have to stipulate that?
No, that's a regular gift.
That's a regular.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's like, I guess make an example, for a person that wants to give the gifts, wants to like give his, whatever he's gonna leave, like as a gift beforehand.
Right.
Like he'll tell like maybe his youngest son, oh, you own this property now, and then you get the produce.
Right. Right. So, okay. Time the Layam Martinu. Now, in all of these cases, exactly, that's all of these cases, the reason why we don't return these documents is because the person that's involved doesn't say to give it, but if he says that you should give the document, in other words, the giver of this, so then nice, and then we would give it. Okay. You have a problem with this Mishnah. Basically, the Mishnah said that the reason why we don't return it is because there's a possibility that maybe he changed his mind. But let's say he tells us that he didn't change his mind. So he tells us to give it. That I have no problem with giving this person this gift, giving this person this will. He tells us that there's no problem. So then it sounds like we would return it. The only problem with this is that we have contradictions. It says, Ramina, we have a contradiction. Matzah daitikos, apaitikos, matanis. You find documents similar to this, wills, or apaitiki, which is like a designated field to collect from, or other gifts. Even if everyone agrees, you don't return it. Now we have a real contradiction. Contradiction is, if in a case the giver of the gift says that that you can return this document to so and so, the recipient of the gift. So in the Mishnah, it seems like we would say that you can return it. The Brisa says clearly that you can't. Amar Rabba Bar Mama Lekasha. Rabba Bar Mama says there's no question. Haba Baria B'Shchiv Mira. Depends. If we're dealing with a healthy person, if we're dealing with a person on the sickbed. The difference, the basic difference that this Amar of Gemara is going to discuss is that when a healthy person gives a gift, so then the gift is finalized. It's done. When a sick person gives a gift, so he can keep updating it. People keep updating the wills. Until he dies, he can still change his will. So one is a gift.
To a healthy person.
No, once a healthy person gives a gift, it's done.
Oh.
The gift of the Shchimira only takes effect after he dies. And so therefore he can keep updating it. Depending on how often the children call.
Because a sick person is assumed to pass away soon. That's when it takes into effect.
When he passes away, that's when it takes effect. But until then, you can keep updating it. So, right. So Masnisin Diktani, The Mishnah that says that we're medayek from the Mishnah. But if he would say to give it, then we would give it. That's talking about someone that's on his deathbed, the bar mahaderhu, because he could retract. Damrinan, because we say the following. Okay, now the following Gemara has a totally different style than other Gemaras. Yeah, I saw someone mention that the Ramban says that this is from this piece of Gemara is from a later author. Did we say mention anything in the article?
Yeah, so the Rambam notes that elaborate expositions such as this are later additions to Gemara from Rabbi Yehuda Gal.
It says from Rabbi Yehuda Gain. Rabbi Yehuda Gain. Yehuda or Yehudai? Yehudai Gain. But this is from the Gainim. Yeah.
That's not uncommon for.
There are certain pieces of one of the Gainim. Yeah, there's certain pieces of Gemara that were added by the Gainim.
They found a need to expound on something.
Yeah. Sometimes it says v'hilchasa. The halacha is like they made conclusions. They added that in, and he's saying that this elaboration. It's a very interesting elaboration, but it's not a typical elaboration. So. Let's say like this. Okay, what we're doing now is we're comparing two scenarios. One is where the document that was found came from a shchiv meira, someone on a sick bed. One is where the document that was found came from a healthy person. We have to come up with what are the concerns with the healthy person that we won't return it. What are the concerns with the shchiv meira that we won't be concerned about and we will return it. So we say that if it's a shchiv meira, we'll return it. The Amrina, we say the following. Mai ikala meimar. What could there possibly, so far it looks like it's a regular Gemara. Dilma kasve mikar lahai. Maybe what happened was this sick person, let's say his name is Ruvain. He wrote a document for Shimon. And then he changed his mind and he doesn't give it to him. But then he wrote a second document and he did give it to him. Okay. So we don't know what that second document is, but we know that the first document is the one that we found, right? This is there's the possibility. First document is the one that we found, and this is a shchiv meira document. It's a will. But there may be a second document. But maybe the second document was given, the first document wasn't given. Now the second document, he got into a fight with the second guy, and he decides he doesn't want him to have the property. So how did he give it? There's a possibility. Maybe he gave it to the second person as a bari, as a healthy person. Now that would be a real gift. The first document is absolutely nothing. Now he's saying,
because the second one kind of redacts the first one. Right.
It finished. It was the second document. Now there's no retracting from that. So now we have the first document. This will, and the second document would be the real owner. Now he wants to get rid of the second document by giving this first document back to Shimon. Second document went to Levi. So what's the problem now? Let's say that there's no problem. Let's say both Shimon and Levi end up in court. Levi is going to win. Because we see the document, the first document was a document of a will. Document of a will you can always change until the person dies. And we see a second document, which was dated later, which was given to Levi. So Levi is going to get the property. So we have no problem giving this document that was found on the street back to Shimon, because Shimon won't be able to do anything with it anyway. So there's no corruption that's going to take place. Because even if it was given to someone else after Shimon, that person will be able to keep it. Let's say the person, Levi, received it as a matna shchiv meira. So nami yavanele, we can still return it. because less leipseda, because we still don't have any problem. The basrais is achi because how does it work when you have two documents, two wills? The second one always wins. The chika hader be'mikamaisa, because when he retracted from the kahader be'zachi, the kahader be'mikamaisa, because he retracted from the first one. Okay. So we don't really have any concern that returning this earlier document is going to create some corruption of justice, because the second one is always going to win, because the first document that was found was a will. So whether the second document is another will, or the second document was a matnas bari, the first document is going to be worthless. So we have no corruption of justice by returning the first document.
If someone like does multiple wills and then he passes and then everybody comes like with a different will.
One with the latest date is going to be the one. Yeah, they look at the later date, as opposed to a sale where they look at the earlier dates, right? Or a matnas bari, you look at the earlier dates. By a will, you look at the later date.
So there's no problem because that first document doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right, exactly. So we're not concerned. We have no chash that maybe this is going to lead to some takala, some corruption, that someone's going to lose anything from this. Because even if there was a later document, the later document's going to win.
What if somebody wanted to take that first document and sell it?
So when he ends up in court, when he's tried to use the document to get the property or whatever, the holder of it is going to, of the property, is going to produce his document that says that, no, I received it after you. I have a later document.
Sounds to me like you can still do a lot of mischief with that first document.
Yeah, if the second person loses his document or something. Yeah, okay. It doesn't say, for whatever reason, it doesn't mention that problem.
Is he supposed to return that?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. That if the giver of the property said, the shemira says that return the document to Shimon, so will we give the document to Shimon?
No, if someone finds like a lost document.
Right, exactly. Someone finds a lost document and it says that Reuven gave the property to Shimon in his will. So we ask Reuven, do you want this document given to Shimon? He's still on his deathbed. He says yes. So we give it. We have no concern. If Reuven says no, we don't return it. We don't return it. We're talking about where Reuven said yes. So why would Reuven say yes and be dishonest? Because maybe the whole dishonesty that could come out of this is that maybe Reuven had given it to someone else who he's now not happy with, and he's trying to get it out of that person's hands. So he's saying that he has a previous document that he gave, right? If Reuven really wanted to give it to someone else, he would write a later that will, right? So we really have no concern over here. What's the problem? And if he gave it to someone else as a gift, not as a shemira, not as a will, then if there's an argument between gift and will, the gift is going to win. So he's never, anyway, it's not gonna have any problem.
So every time,
I'm sorry.
Every time we say, we found a document, don't give it back, but we still inform the person and ask them if they want it to be given back?
Yeah, according to the Mishnah, it says we would ask the giver of the document, if it can be returned. Yeah, that's what the Mishnah says. The contradiction was the Brisa said no. So what we're establishing is that the Mishnah right here, this is Rabbi Bar Mamal, he says the Mishnah is talking about, it's the document that was found was a document of a shchivmira, of a will, the person on his deathbed. Mm-hmm. And the Brisa that says that we don't ask, and it doesn't matter what he says, that's talking about a regular healthy person's document.
Would that apply to all types of documents that you ask the giver if it's okay?
Well, so far making a distinction if we're going to ask the giver by if it's a will or if it's a healthy person. Yeah, we're saying that both the Mishnah and the Brisa would agree to each other's case. They're only arguing because they're different scenarios. When the Brisa says that it doesn't matter if they agree to give it back, you don't return it. That's talking about Babari, that's talking about a healthy person. Because the person cannot retract from what he gave. So it would go like this. What's the possibilities that this could be good? It says, Damrinan, we're concerned. What could go wrong here is Damrinan Dilma Kasvalahimi Kara. Maybe he wrote it for Shimon, right? He gave Shimon a gift. Oh, he gave Shimon a gift, so give him the document. No, he wrote the document for Layavanai, but he never gave it to him. He had the document written because he thought Shimon was a nice guy. Shimon said, "Good Shabbos to him and Sholi." So, what a nice guy! I'm going to give him my property. But then someone else at the Kiddush was even nicer to him, so he gave it to someone else. Now, who's the real owner of it? It's not Shimon, it's Levi, because he only wrote the document for Shimon. He never gave it to him, but for Levi, he gave it to him. The Savar Mahade, now Levi wasn't so nice to him by Mincha Ma'ariv, so he wants to give it back to Shimon. So he can't retract. He says to them, I gave it to this person. And we'll return the document to him. This is what he's saying. And they'll return the document to Shimon. And then when Shimon pulls out the document, that his is first. So when it comes to a regular gift, then the one that's first is the recipient. Once it's given to one person, all the documents later wasn't even his to give. So Shimon is going to win. And the truth is that it was really Levi's. So we don't want that to happen. El Amrina Levi say to him like this. Anan, it could be Amrina Le Anan. There's two ways of reading this. Okay?
No.
Should we call the doctor?
No.
Maybe it's Amrina Le Anan. Or it's Amrina Le. We say to him, Anan, Hai Ksava Le Yavina Le Lahai. We are not giving this document to so-and-so. How do they have it in the article? Amrina Le Anan? Or Amrina Le Anan Hai Ksava. Let me see where they put the comma.
Let's see, kids.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. El Amrina Le, the way I did it. Anan Hai Ksava Le Yavina Le Lahai. That's how I did it. Anan Hai Ksava Le Yavina Le. Let me see what the Quran says. Take a look at this. I don't know. Amrinan le'anan, the opposite. Yeah, this opposite. They read it the opposite. See, two possibilities. You could read it two ways. Yeah, you could read it either way. Okay. Anan ha'ksava le'yavin le'lahai. We are not giving this document back. Dilma michtav kasavta. Maybe you only wrote it, but you never really give it. You never gave it. You have to and maybe you really gave it to Levi, the property, and now you're retracting from it. We tell him like this: if you want that Shimon should have the property, and you claim that you never really gave it to anyone else, so you're telling me to return it. So guess what? Write another document and give it to Shimon. And now we're going to see the truth. Because when he writes another document, because if he writes another document, but he had already written the document to Levi and given it to Levi, let's say that we're not concerned about that, the Kadam Zach, because Levi is going to win in court. Because whose document is going to be first now? Levi's. So that concern that maybe he wrote a document for Shimon and never gave it. He wrote a document for Levi and gave it. Now he's upset with Levi and he wants to take and give it to Shimon. And he's telling us that we should give Shimon this document that fell So we tell him we have a concern if we're going to give it to Shimon, then maybe there's some fraud going on. This document wasn't really given. So we say, if you're telling me that no one else has a document yet, that no one else is the recipient of this gift, so then write a new document. And if there was a recipient of this gift, then we're not concerned, because even if there is a new document, because the recipient of the gift is going to get it, which is Levi. The first one is going to get it. Okay. So that's what Rababa Marmabel explains, is the explanation of the Mishnah, the reconciliation of the Mishnah and the Brisa. Depends if the document that was found is from a Shchimira or the document that was found was from a Bari, sick person or a healthy person. Maskefler of Zvid. Zvid has a question for Rababa Marmamel. It says, "Vayidividi daita katani." How could you say that? It says over here that in both the Mishnah and the Brisa that we're dealing with the will. You're telling me that one is a will, one's a healthy person. It's not what it says. Alam Rav Zvid said, "Hava b'shtamira." I have to answer the contradiction differently. Say both of them are dealing with the will. And the whole question is the father still alive? One is dealing with if the father's alive, and one's dealing with the son. Okay, so it goes like this. Masnis in the Kamer Tenu Naisnin, the Mishnah that says that he should give it. If he says to give it, that we do give it, that's Bididei, that's with the father. The Bar Mahadu, that the father himself could retract. If he Damrinan, we say, Inami Yav Alena Shachrina, even if he would give it to someone else, let's leip Seda. We're not going to have any loss. Why? Because let's say he gave it to Levi. And now he's saying that you should give the document to Shimon. Right? And there's another document that says that he gave it to Levi. So he said, what's the problem? The Kama Basar Zachi, Levi's going to win it anyway. No matter what, no matter how he gave it to Levi. If there's another document, there's going to be no loss, because when there's a will, a document of will, you can always retract.
There's two documents that are saying that Levi received something.
No, there's a document that says that Shimon received the property of Reuven as a will, in a will. Shimon received the property of Reuven. Yeah. And now we have a concern that maybe we shouldn't return the document, because maybe Reuven made a deal with someone else and giving it to someone else. So we're saying that, what's the problem with that? Yeah, what's the problem with that? He's allowed to retract and change, so it's no problem. So this document can always go, because the document has a date on it, and we'll know who wins based on the date. The real problem with the wills is when they play with it, they forge it, and they do other stuff with it. But if there's an entire other document, so that would go. If there's a later document, so that's what the later one wins.
Will without a date,
Right, because we don't know about the later one. Maybe it's earlier, maybe it's later. Yeah. A will comes with direction.
Yeah, because where there's a will, there's a ways.
So where there's a will, there's a relative.
At that time, there's always relatives.
The Kambasazachi, the Hadabemikama, because he retracted. Nakiktani Bebraisa, and the Brisa says that you don't return the document, even if the person tells us to return it. Even though they're both saying, give it to him, give it to him, give it to him. That's talking about Bibari. That's talking about, I'm not Bibari, Bibrei. Read that differently. Bibrei, with the son. Talking about with the son, because the father already passed away. Damrinan, because we think like this. Dilma Kasav Abu Alahai. Maybe the father, he had to listen to this corruption. Maybe the father had written a document for Shimon, but he never gave it. So he passed away, and the document was never given. And who inherits the property? The son. He never gave it to Shimon. Ubasar Avua Kasav Iyu. Now, after the father did that, he goes ahead.
He has to physically give it to Shimon or the person else.
Yeah. Now the interesting thing is that I thought that he doesn't even have to give him the document.
Why do we assume?
But maybe he retracted. He retracted. Maybe he retracted from that document.
Why do we assume Shimon is unrelated? Right? Maybe the whole case could be with these are children, and one has a document, and one is just.
Could be.
Shimon.
Could be.
Then you have.
Could be. Yeah, it could be the same thing. Right. Right. But it would be the same story. It would be the same issues. This one has a document, this one doesn't, this one has a later one, an earlier one. It would be the same thing whether it's an outsider or an insider.
But the other insider without the document doesn't have a greater claim than that.
Right. But here our concern is that maybe there was another document. And now, well, so take a look at this. In this case, now we're dealing with the father left one document, but it wasn't given. So the son inherits. We have a concern that maybe the son that was in a very generous mood, and he gave the field over to Levi. And now he's upset with Levi and he wants to get it out. So what he does is he comes up with a will from his father that his father never used. And he says, the field that I gave to Levi was never mine. My father had given it to Shimon. I can't retract because I'm a healthy person and I gave the field, but I'm upset with him. He was messing with me. I'm going to show him. So he's going to get the field away. Amar lahu, we say to him, or Amar lahu, I will say to them, my father gave it to Shimon, and he gave him a document. Now he's going to go to Levi, extract the property that he had given to Levi, give it to Shimon, the who zachi, and I'm gonna divide it with him. Him and Shimon are now gonna divide the field.
If I understand correctly, but he couldn't give it because it wasn't his. Like her father had given.
Yeah, somehow he retracted from that will because he never gave it to him. Yeah, I'm not sure how he retracts from the will. I thought that the will worked automatically. Is there a comment over there of how he retracts from the will? The Amrina and the father wrote a will, the Imlach, but he reconsidered and did not give it to him. There's no comment here. I guess the will has to be given as well. The document has to be given. That's what the document has to be given. If the document isn't given, even if it's written, so somehow the person doesn't get it.
At least today, like people write wills and nobody knows what's in the will till after they pass.
Right.
Like a new thing.
Let me just see what Taisus is saying. No, nothing.
Did the father pass away already?
Yeah. In the Brisa, the father passed. Right. Okay, I'm not sure. So, Hilkach Amrinalei, because of this concern, that could be that the son had given it. Now the son's not happy with his own gift. The son is retracting. Hilkach Amrinalei, we say Anan or Amrinalei Anan. We're not giving this document back. Maybe your father wrote it, but he never gave it. You have to and you're the one that's giving it to someone else. And now you're retracting. If it's true that your father really gave it to Shimon, if it's true, and that's why you're the one that's saying return it to Shimon, you go write a document of gift that you're giving the field to Shimon. Now, because then if you had given the field to someone else, and now you're giving it to Shimon, when Shimon's going to come and try to take it, Levi's going to surface, and say, I have a document that preceded your document, then Levi's going to win. Let's say that the Kama Bas or Kama Zachi, because when there's a conflict between a regular gift, always the first one is going to win. So we're not concerned over here about any corruption. Okay. Next Gemara. Taner Rabbanan. Matzah Shoiver. So basically, we had in the last Gemara we had Rav Abba Bar Mamal's answer, but Rav Zvid had a question. We have Rav Zvid's answer. We are if the father's still alive, then we would actually ask the father, and we would be able to return the document. If the son is, if the father's not alive, then we don't ask the son. Okay. Matzah Shoiver. If the document that was found is a receipt of a ksuba. Now, who would hold the receipt of the ksuba? The husband, because the wife would have the get. Wife, let's say, the wife holds the ksuba the whole marriage. Then at the divorce, the husband pays the wife the ksuba. Now the husband gets a receipt that the ksuba has been paid, or you tear up the ksuba and then he doesn't need a receipt because she can't claim it. But let's say it's a case where they write receipts because let's say they didn't have ksuba documents and the tearing up of the ksuba, and she needs to hold her get because she wants to get remarried, and maybe she's going to use the get as a proof that she's deserving the ksuba. So they have a receipt for the ksuba has been paid, and the husband would hold that. Well, now it's on the floor, outside some liquor store, and someone finds it. So Bismanchi Shemaida, if the woman agrees that it's been paid, Samaida, Bismanchi Shemaida, then Yachsilabal, then you return it to the husband. Okay. Aini Shemaida, if the woman doesn't agree, then you don't return it. Okay, now the Gemara's question is like this. Bismanchi Shemaida, Miyas Yachsilabal, what are you saying? That if the woman agrees to pay, that the ksuba has been paid, you give the receipt to the husband, like as if there's nothing to be concerned about. Because if she's paid, that means she's forgiving the loan. She's not a loan. She's as if she's forgiving a loan. She's forgiving the debt, the obligation that the husband has to pay her. What's the problem? Says no. There's a big problem because could be maybe the receipt was written because the husband said, "I'm going to pay you. Get a receipt ready," but it took 6 months for him to pay, and then in that 6 months. She went in that 6 months. She went and sold the ksuba. When you sell a ksuba, you're selling a risk, a possible ksuba. Maybe the husband's going to die. Maybe the husband's going to divorce her, and so she sold it. Okay.
Mortgage.
Yeah. It's a default, isn't it?
Default,
Yeah.
they don't get the notes worth the value of the star.
Right. So she sold the ksuba for the teva sana. The rights to be able to collect it if the husband dies and if he divorces her. Maybe the person will never collect it. Maybe she'll die before the husband. Okay. So, but also during that time. So after the document was written, before the document was used, she had sold the ksuba. Now what happens is she gets divorced, right? And the husband, she gets divorced, and the husband gives her the property, or whatever the case is. This guy shows up. And says the property is mine. The person that bought the ksuba, he takes the property, and now she pulls out a receipt that says that the ksuba has been paid before you even purchased the ksuba. So
She basically sold something that was worthless.
Here it's saying that the husband is going to take the shaver, and he's going to take the property back. The receipt.
boy.
The receipt that she wrote her husband. That she had no right to accept payment in Tishrei. Oh, what it's saying is like this, that she was actually paid in Tishrei. She wasn't supposed to be paid in Tishrei. She wasn't supposed to be paid for the ksuba because she has sold the ksuba. So and now the husband produces the receipt that was written in Nisan, claims that he already paid off her ksuba before she sold it.
So there, whichever one she did first is the real owner of the.
Okay, what's 18? The husband may use the predated receipt. The husband may use the predated receipt to prove that he had paid her ksuba entitlement before she sold it, will thus defraud the purchaser of the payment to which they are entitled. Okay. Yeah, so we have a concern. Even when the woman agrees to the returning of the receipt of the ksuba, we think, oh, she's such a tzaddikas. But it could be that really she had sold the ksuba and she's really defrauding the purchaser of the ksuba. Amar Rava says, you're not really, it's not really a problem. You know why? Because Shema Mina Yisalid Shmuel on top of Daf Chaf. It could be, you could say like this, that we accept Shmuel's view. Shmuel had an opinion like this. Shmuel says, that if someone sells a promissory note, which allows, let's say, Ruvain as a creditor, Ruvain lent money to Shimon, and he can take property from Shimon to collect, or he has a note. And then Ruvain sells the note to Levi. Now, Levi can take the property from Shimon. But even though he sold the note to Levi, that doesn't mean that Ruvain is not the original creditor. And since Ruvain is the original creditor, Ruvain can forgive the loan, even though he sold it already. He can still forgive it. Yeah, this doesn't work in today's thing. So it's only like the right to collect doesn't mean the actual debt was sold. It means the right to collect, but the actual debt is still on Ruvain, and Ruvain has the rights to forgive it. So if that's the case over here, what are you worried about? That maybe the woman is trying to defraud the person that bought the ksuba by using this fake document, this receipt that the ksuba was already paid and that had fallen. They were worried about that. That's not fraud. She's allowed to do that. She's allowed to forgive the debt. She could always forgive the debt on the ksuba, even though she sold it, but she could still forgive it. So it's not fraud. Yeah, poor guy, but it's halachically correct. So what are you worried about? So that's what Rabbi says. It must be that we hold like Shmuel, and that's the way out. Abaya says, I feel the same less the Shmuel, even if we don't hold of this halacha from Shmuel, which is a very interesting halacha. But we could still say that she still has the shtar ksuba, and therefore we have no concern that maybe she sold it, because if she would have sold it, then she would have given the ksuba. When you sell the ksuba, you give the ksuba. She still has a ksuba. What's the concern? Why didn't Rava answer that? You don't have to say that he's holding like Shmuel, which is this unique halacha. It says Rava Amar mishum shtar ksuba chashin l'shtei ksubas. Maybe she had two. Maybe she had a copy of the ksuba. Maybe there's two ksubas that was written. Abaya Amar chada l'shtei ksubas leichshin. Abaya says that's never a concern. We don't have. There's no concern of maybe two ksubas. Va'oid shaver bismanei tarif. And also, be a ksuba, like let's say she lost one. Yeah, but then it says clearly that the ksuba was lost, and then it was really only one ksuba. The second one says that
Says
that
the suit.
no, the second ksuba says that because the ksuba was lost, we're writing this. So so even if there is a first one, but the second one is gonna
No,
always
you sell the
same.
first one first and then sell the second.
Right.
Or you keep
Future
Yeah.
business. We can
So
open up as declaring too.
Abaya holds Shaver Bismane Teref, whatever the date in the receipt is, that's actually the time that it's acquired. In other words, it doesn't go after the time the receipt is used, it's time after it's written. Abaya follows his reading, that it's the signatures in the document that make the acquisition, and as opposed to the time then of when she actually received the money. She was already forgiven. The receipt was already in effect from the time that it was written, and that's why Abaya didn't say that.
Even if the receipt wasn't given.
Yeah, which means that her sale was never anything, because the receipt was already effective even from Nisan, even some 6 months ago. So the sale was never effective. So why does Abaya have to say that we're following? Oh yeah, why does Abaya have to say that we're following Shmuel? Sale wasn't effective even before we sold it.
This isn't the opposite of the loan. The person takes the debt
Yeah, because he already forgave the loan even before the sale. Yeah, I'm not sure why we had. Oh, that's why Abaya means less of the Shmuel. Abaya was the one that said that we don't have to hold of Shmuel because the loan was forgiven beforehand. Rava was saying that we have to accept Shmuel because Rava was saying that the sale was a valid sale of her ksuba, but nevertheless she could still forgive the loan. She could still forgive the debt. Okay. Let's see the Mishnah. Metzia Grishum, Vigris Mazan. Let's say the documents that were found were documents of evaluation of what do you call when they appraisal. Because what happened was Shimon didn't pay Reuven back, so they made an appraisal on his property, and the appraisal, which says in it the value of the property, that was the document that was found. But let's say a husband had accepted that he was going to support his wife's daughter. Shtari Chalitza. It's a document that said that Chalitza was performed. Miyunin. Or there was a girl that her father died and her brothers married her off, and she decided to leave that husband, which is only a rabbinic marriage. So she can leave. It's called Miyan. And so they wrote a document that says that she performed Miyan, she left it, which means she could go get married with this. Shtari Beirin. Shtari Beirin is usually when people, we'll see in the Gemara, but it's people decide that they're going to accept the judgment from such and such a judge. To litigants, yeah. But Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin, in any act of the court, Hareza Yachsa, that's, we kept quoting this in the past. Kol Ma'aseh Bezdin, Hareza Yachsa. Any act of the court, anything that's been validated in the court, we will return it if it's found. Beirur is clarification. If you found a document inside a case, you find a whole bundle of documents. Okay. Oh yeah, good. The shel shtaris or a bundle. What's the first one? What's the tachrich? Rolls. A roll. Okay, it's a bunch. Hareza yachsu. This you can return. Kama good the shel shtaris, because what would be a bundle of documents? How many? So it says shleisha kshun zebazeh. 3 documents that are tied together. Shimon ben Gamliel says echad aleiva mishleisha. He explains, he says like this, that if there's one borrower from three different people in these documents, he says he borrowed from Shimon let's say, Reuven borrowed from Shimon Levi Yehuda, all right? So then, whose documents are these? It's all Reuven's. It's not that one document belongs to Levi one. And Shleisha, Levi Menechad, if there's three people that borrowed from one person, right? Shimon Levi Yehuda borrowed from Reuven. So then, whose documents are these? Then Yachsalam Alva. They're all Reuven's documents because they're all found together. You can see whose documents are. If there is a document amongst them, you don't know what's going on. Could be there. It's like a third person holding the document. So then, then you have to leave this document and you don't return it. If there are simpinus, simpinus like a receipt, yasamashab simpinus. Unissued documents. Then what does it say? You can return it.
You should abide by which is recorded in the receipts.
Let me see what it says. If there are unissued receipts among his documents, he does not remember whether or not he received payment. He should abide by what is recorded in the receipts, which means we should treat the debt as paid. Although this receipt, if it's valid, ought to be in the hands of the debtor, we presume in this case the debtor paid the note but trusted the creditor to provide him with the receipt at a later date. The creditor wrote the receipt but failed to deliver it, and eventually forgot why the receipt was in his possession. Okay. Gemara asks over here, let me use this. My story Beirin. What are the documents of clarification? Here they explain Shtari Tainasa. These are the documents that record the case, the arguments. This is the court scribes. Rabbi Yirmiyah says no. This is documents of Zebar Layachad. This is the agreement that when they chose the judges, this is the agreement that they say that they're going to follow what the judges say. Each one chose his own judge. Oh, okay. Let's leave it over here. B'chol Ma'aser Bezdin.
We have a nice illustration here.
Rolls. Okay.
Will there be any like Gemaras and Mishnahs that'll go into the method and how which